Hi, this is Paul Gerst from the Balanced Path Wellness Center. It's time for another episode of On Your Natural Health. Today I'm here with Brad Cronin, a friend of mine, and he is a captain of the Newport Fire Department. And he and his wife together own a business, Strategic Code Solutions. And I'm going to welcome Brad to the show now. Brad, are you there?
I'm here, Paul. How are you?
Good. In fact, I'm trying to figure out this doggone Zoom thing. Let's see if I can figure that out. I just did something I've never done before. Yay. Anyways, well, tell you what, since you're the star, I'm going to just leave it the way it is. So what, can you tell us a little bit about your business that you have with your wife, Amy?
Sure. So my wife, Amy, and myself have the business Strategic Code Solutions, and we do various things relating to building and fire codes. My area of expertise coming from the fire service are fire codes, specifically water-based installation standards. So I deal with sprinklers, standpipes, fire pumps, things that go into buildings to kind of automatically try and suppress or control a fire if one starts in a building. So my area of expertise are those standards. And what I do for the business is I go out and teach various classes, seminars for different associations on those topics.
So how do those codes, how does that, like what you teach, how does that relate to the average person? How would they see that come to fruition?
It's kind of like the insurance policy for your car, I guess. You never know it's there until you need it. So when you walk in a building, most average people don't notice the fact that there's sprinklers in the building, yeah, or that there's standpipes or a fire pump. But in the case of an emergency or a fire, that's the time when you kind of notice that they're there. So for the average person, I would say it's really an insurance policy. It's not something they use day to day, but it's something that provides a level of safety and kind of just helps curtail any fires if they start in a building.
So how much does this have to do with building inspections, working with contractors, making sure that buildings, whether they're skyscrapers or small office buildings, is it just making sure that they're up to, is this a uniform code, a town code, a state code? What is the angle here?
Yeah, it's kind of all of those things. There are national consensus-based standards. So, for instance, there are a couple of what we call SDOs, or Standard Developing Organizations. There's the International Code Council, which writes the International Building Code, the Residential Code, and that's pretty much what most, I would say 95% of states throughout the country adopt as their building code. So it's not necessarily uniform throughout. There's a model base code when it comes to building and fire that states, counties, municipalities may adopt. But typically when they adopt it, they make their own amendments. So they may determine, hey, there's some different things that go on in our state, and we need to make some modifications or some amendments to this national consensus document to make it more specific for our jurisdiction.
Okay. So, and how long have you been doing this with Amy?
So our business was formed in January of 2014. So we are in our 6th year of operation. As I said, my side of the business is mostly teaching. So I'll go out and talk to different groups, could be contractors, installers, engineers, architects, about these different standards and kind of how they fit together. As far as my wife, Amy, her area of expertise is really how the codes come together on a national level. So the process of writing those base documents is really what she does. So she'll work for a company, a manufacturer, a group of people that are looking to effect change on a national level in a consensus document. And she'll help them through the process, kind of make the arguments for why their specific language should be included in the document to get them recognized.
And what's the, I don't want to say the end game of your business, obviously most businesses are involved in making money and this kind of thing. What's your end game with the, um, I guess the question I want to ask is, what's your passion behind the business? I mean, what is there something that you and Amy want to see happen from your existence in this business?
So I don't know that we really sit on the couch at night and talk about our passion for the business together. But what I can say is my passion anyway is after, I've been in the fire service for close to 25 years now. I spent several of those years working in fire prevention. And when I started in fire prevention with the city of Newport, it was maybe a year and a half or so after the Station nightclub fire.
Okay.
The Station nightclub fire had a big effect on the code, specifically in Rhode Island, but also on a national level. And so I saw through my work there the benefit of proper enforcement, proper understanding and education on the documents and the standards, and really that most people, while they don't have a great understanding for what goes into a building from a systems perspective, making sure that it's done right and that everything is going to work correctly is an important part of that. So my passion is really when I go out and teach, if I teach fire marshals, it's, hey, to make sure you understand what the document is, to uniformly apply it throughout so that, everybody's doing the same thing, and to make sure that things are done correctly.
Well, I know, speaking for myself, I know that with all the legalese and all the just the cumbersome documentation out there, which on one hand I've learned is necessary, but on another hand, it's like when I'm forced to have to sit down, like in other words, who reads their health insurance manual, those kinds of things. I really am grateful for people who do it and explain it to me. So,
and every bit of regulation is the same in that manner. They're either written by a governmental body, or they're written by a group that promulgates regulations for a state or a jurisdiction, or they're written by, in the case of these model codes from, I said, ICC, International Code Council, or NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association. It's really a group of volunteers that gets together and writes these documents, and it's representative of all different interest groups. So maybe people that manufacture different components for systems, people that install them, people that own buildings that they go into, people that enforce them from a building and fire marshal standpoint. But yeah, it's not something that's really cut and dry, and there are a lot of ambiguities in the documents, and there's a lot of things that we don't see. When we sit down as a committee, there's usually about between 30 and 60 of us that sit together and work on revising a document. So for instance, in October, I sit on the document that is fire pumps, installation of fire pumps. So it's everything from what kind of diesel engines you can use, electric motors, the pump itself, the size of the piping, the wiring of the pump, everything, soup to nuts of a fire pump, kind of,
sure,
so to speak, is in the document. And when we meet, anybody that wants to make a change has a certain period of time before we meet to submit that requested change. And when we sit as a committee, we have to look at all those prospective changes, and we have to decide whether we want to incorporate them or not incorporate them based on what the reason behind it is. If a diesel engine manufacturer came to us and said, hey, all diesel engines have to be yellow, and it was Caterpillar because they wanted to eliminate the competition, probably not going to make that change. But if there's some, legitimacy behind what's going on, and people are having issues with trying to use a certain section of the document, or it's not enforceable, then those are the kind of things that we look at for change.
sure.
But what we see is, we'll sit every 3 years to make these changes. And we'll sit and write this document, and when we're done, it's clear as a bell to us because we all sat in the room and heard the arguments and the discussion. And then 3 years later, when we sit back down, we'll find out that there's 50 requests to change this one section because nobody else was reading it the same way that we wrote it. And when we start to look at how they were reading it, we say, well, that kind of makes sense. We never thought of it, but yeah, this is exactly how it's written.
Are there any, before I move on to your role as a captain in the fire department, I'd like to, is there a story, or either a story you can share regarding the business, or maybe venture a guess as to how many buildings aren't up to code, maybe, or maybe in serious need of attention in Massachusetts?
I would certainly say that you could probably walk into every building on any given day and find an issue that
Sure.
doesn't meet the building and fire code.
Okay.
Now, does that mean that there's going to be a major life loss in that building tomorrow? Probably not. But it could range everything from the deadbolt on the front door doesn't meet the graspability for somebody that has restricted mobility to turn and open the door if there's an emergency. So that could be an issue that you see. And it could be something all the way up to, somebody had an issue with people breaking in, and so they screwed a 2x4 across their back door. So I think every building you go in, there's some level of issue. You walk into the retail store and there's a pallet of stuff they just had delivered blocking part of the aisle. Yep. That's an issue. But I guess that we write codes kind of in a vacuum. We sit in a room and it's a very sterile environment, but we acknowledge the fact that that things happen in the real world, and it's not a perfect place, and there's going to be some issue, and it's just a question of how major it is, and whether it is something that's an imminent danger to people's lives, like a door that's screwed shut.
Well, that's what makes you smarter than the average politician, because they don't seem to realize that. So I appreciate that you do realize that. And actually, one of the reasons I wanted you on the show is because I'm because I've been accused of most of my life, of noticing things about people and their health because of what I do. I noticed about you that when we go into a building, that you see things so quickly about that. In other words, I diagnose people, you diagnose buildings. I see how fast you notice things, and I was impressed by that. So I thought that would be fun to have you on and talk about that. But let's move on to your.
I'll sit at dinner sometimes with my wife, and she'll, we'll go to a restaurant, and she'll say, "Oh, did you notice I got this new necklace?" And it's like, no, but did you notice there's a painted sprinkler in the entryway that we walked by?
Well, so to talk a little bit, we just have a few minutes left, but talk about your role with the fire department, how long you've been with them, and maybe a story or two, just so people can hear a little bit what it's like to be a firefighter.
Sure. I guess, so I started as a firefighter when I was in college in 1996 in northern Vermont. And when I left school after 4 years of college, I left and ended up getting a job in the city of Newport, and that was February 2001. So I'll be coming up on completing my 20th year, February of 2021. So here, just about 6 months away from finishing up 20 years on the fire department in Newport. And it's been a blur. It's been a crazy ride, interesting stuff that's happened along the way. It's, no two calls that you go on are the same. It's, everything from fires and major medical and traumas to, I locked my keys in my car, or my smoke alarm's beeping. And then there's a lot of downtime. People, see the firefighters at the station, and maybe you're sitting out front of the station, or you're just, washing the trucks or doing stuff. And, there is a lot of time that we're not out on emergency calls, which I guess for the community at large is a good thing, because it means nobody's having a bad day. But it's downtime, and it's time when we train, and it's time when we do housekeeping, or we're eating a meal or studying or things of that nature. So really, to sum it up, it's kind of like, 95% boredom and 5% sheer terror is probably the best way to put firefighting into a package.
I think that 95% of the time, some of that should be readjusting your adrenal glands. It sounds like they get a workout when you are busy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there has been a shift, a kind of a cultural shift in the fire service where, we really never looked at our health, mental health and physical health, and other than, how much you bench and, that kind of stuff. And we'd have big meals. We'd have, what do you want today? Oh, how about sausage, peppers, and onions? Well, we had that yesterday. How about chorizo and linguiça? Oh, that's fine. Yeah, we didn't have that yesterday. So I think now we're doing a little better as far as trying to, have healthier meals, have a little bit better portion control. We try and do PT as much as we can. And there's been a push on the mental health side as well to kind of acknowledge that, we see things that maybe the average person doesn't, that, we may have issues with PTSD, we may have issues with depression, anxiety, and everything else that goes along with some of the stuff we have to do and how our bodies react to, the extreme environments that we're in, as well as the, stress of sleep deprivation and kind of going from that resting period at midnight to all the lights and a, 95 decibel bell coming on in the station to tell you that there's a call, going from that resting phase into that, and the effects that it has on your cardiovascular health as well as your just general well-being.
So so you mentioned cardiovascular health, and I don't recall if you said that was number one, or I remember you and I talked about this before, and that was one of the top issues. Do you have are you aware of the top 2-3 health issues that firefighters face?
Yeah, historically, as far as occupational deaths annually, and we lose about 100 to maybe 130, 140 on a bad year. Firefighters annually on the job. And historically, it used to be that it was a majority cardiovascular, heart attacks. And there's been a shift, and it's now cancer. Cancer is now the number one.
Okay.
But I would say that as far as top 3, I would probably it would be cardiovascular. It would be cancer, and then I would say that probably, unfortunately, suicide is probably right up there as well. With any of the first responders, police, fire, EMS are all kind of in that same boat. Of
course, validating what you said about the mental health concerns, and that's hopefully that's being addressed. The cancer, just wanted to circle back to that. Is there is it lung, liver, skin? What are we talking about?
Yeah, it's back in the day it was lung, because we had limited respiratory protection. So you'd see the guys go into the smoke, and if you needed more respiratory protection, you grew a bigger mustache to protect your nose. Was pretty much how it worked. We wised up in the 60s, late 60s, 70s into the 80s, and we had self-contained breathing apparatus that were protecting us very well from a respiratory standpoint. So the lung cancers went away. What happened after that was the chemicals that were used in the gear for fire retardant are carcinogens.
Lymph cancer?
Yep. The foams that were used for firefighting, some of the solvents and foams that were used were carcinogens. And a lot of the issues we have with the older fire stations are migration of diesel exhaust into the living quarters and onto the gear.
Wow.
So, gear storage, when we're not wearing our gear, it's sitting out on the floor where the apparatus is.
Sure.
And if, there's systems that connect to the vehicle exhaust and pull the diesel soot and particulate out of the building, but they're not 100% effective.
Sure.
And not every station has them. So when the vehicles start, that exhaust kind of fills the apparatus area, and as that particulate falls and settles, it settles into your gear and typically into your pants and on the inside of your pants. So when you pull them up, you're getting all that soot now right against your skin, and as you sweat and you have the heat and increased body temperature of firefighting, you're essentially just baking that carcinogen right into yourself.
Yeah, well, though they say don't put anything on your skin you don't want in your body.
Yeah.
Well, Brad, I really appreciate you being on the show. I think it was immensely interesting. Is there anything that you'd like to say in parting to people that may watch this, and as far as advice you'd give them or things that you'd like to see change in the world of firefighting?
I think we're moving in the right direction. Change unfortunately is slow at times, but we're heading in the right direction. I think I've found great benefit from some of the services that you offer, the acupuncture and some of the products have helped me immensely. So I think traditionally it's not stuff that we think of. We're typically not the foofy, hippie kind of group in the fire service, but you have to kind of think outside the box, and it's something we do every day when we problem solve at work. We're not given a manual of here's how you work your day start to finish. You kind of have to think outside the box, and with your health and well-being, I think that works as well too.
Well, thank you for that. And I will catch up with you soon. And again, thanks for being on the show, Brad.
Sounds good, Paul. Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you.
And to all of you, thank you very much for listening. Brad's a very interesting guy, and I'm grateful to call him my friend. Thanks for watching another episode of On Your Natural Health. I will see you next time.